This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Curtis Wilkerson is HawgSports.com basketball and recruiting analyst, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Covers all the things involving the Razorbacks, so I can ask him a quick baseball music question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Curtis. If you had to pick one song and one song only, are you picking this one, Center Field by John Fogerty, or are you going with Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen?
Ooh, wow, that is a good one to be put on the spot.
I did not prepare you for this one. I know you thought you were just talking basketball. This is the toughest question you'll get. No,
that's okay. I like it. Man, I don't know if you go wrong either way. I'd probably go Glory Days. Yes, final answer.
I understand. I'd go in the other direction. We'll get our listeners. We'll and look, it's parsing because they're both great songs. Yeah, I'm excited about everything going on at 6 o'clock today. NBA draft, College World Series game. I have a feeling I think you'll be watching both because you're into both sports, but you'll be watching a little bit more closely to the NBA draft. What are your plans today for the draft specifically?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're right. I'm definitely going to have an eye on both. I'll do the split screen thing. This Wake versus LSU matchup, I think it's going to be awesome. So I am looking forward to that. But definitely the priorities on the draft, just really keeping an eye on this thing. I mean, it's almost unprecedented, right? I mean, it really kind of a historic night in the making here for the Arkansas basketball program, Eric Musselman. It's fascinating. And usually, you have a guy, maybe two, that you're monitoring, kind of have an idea of where they're going to go. It's going to be a marathon event for Arkansas basketball fans. I mean, you're going to get at least one lottery pick, a couple first-rounders, 3 one-and-dones, and up to 4 players drafted. I mean, that's a lot of rarities and firsts, and that's not just at Arkansas, but anywhere. So just a huge night for the brand and the visibility of the program, a huge addition, I think, to the recruiting pitch moving forward. So it's, an overwhelmingly positive kind of night. That speaks to the trajectory of Arkansas basketball and, who's going to have the best drip, right? I mean, I'm going to be ranking the suit game of Anthony Black, Nick Smith, and Eric Musselman tonight in Brooklyn, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Getting a chance to see Muss in a suit is, worth enough to tune into
that
TV
Razorback
show.
Houndstooth type jacket he'll probably have on something. He'll
right.
be OG with it. Yeah. Hey, Curtis, I did want to ask you a little bit. So I haven't watched a lot of the Ignite teams or these G League or the whatever that when they don't go to college. But when I watch college basketball, I didn't see 5 better basketball players than Anthony Black. But that being said, is Brandon Miller the clear-cut first college basketball player that's going to be drafted in this draft?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. If you look at it, it doesn't matter what crazy things happen on draft night. It takes one unforeseen trade to really shake everything up. And we might see that. You got to keep an eye on Portland there at number 3 with this Dame Lillard situation. They try to trade that pick and, get some stars around him. I don't know. But regardless of who's selected in the first 3, I think, obviously you're looking at Victor Wembanyama, ridiculously talented. Scoot Henderson there at the G League Ignite. But, yeah, Brandon Miller fits into that top 3 for sure there with Alabama as the top college player to come off the board. But, hey, after that, I think Anthony Black really has an argument as maybe that second guy to come off the board. You kind of put him in that category with, maybe a Jarris Walker out of Houston, Cam Whitmore at Villanova. But, yeah, I mean, AB is right up there as well, kind of in that next tier behind Brandon Miller.
How is Nick Smith's health? Because I think that dude can play. There's no question about it that he's talented. But the question is his knee. What is the word on his knee?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to find out a lot more about that based on where he gets selected here tonight. It seems like he must be feeling pretty well. Obviously, he didn't participate in the combine, but that stuff is strategic. They do that for a reason. But he's been going through workouts with teams. They did their pro day with Clutch Sports, his agency, and he's been participating and doing well in all those. So it seems like he feels pretty good. Now, obviously, they're going to go in depth with those medicals and have access to, whatever tests and scans or whatever they might have done. And, I think that'll be telling as to where he goes. But I think it's fair, to say that Arkansas and college basketball fans didn't really get to see what he's capable of. And, dealing with that knee in and out of the lineup. That's a tough situation. It's kind of designed for him to struggle, but you still, you saw the flashes with him. You know that he's an immense talent. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see, can he sneak into that back end of the lottery? Maybe Toronto or New Orleans at 13, 14. If not, I know the Lakers, you see him at 17 in a lot of those mock drafts, Miami at 18. So I don't think he's going to slide into the 20s, but if he does, Nick Smith Jr. is such a talented guy. He'd be one of those really trendy names that might be one of the steals of the draft.
For Jordan Walsh, the measurables are off the charts. Just
7'1" wingspan, ridiculous.
Can jump out of the gym. He's fast. He gives great effort. I think he cares about the game. That doesn't always mean that he's going to morph into what it looks like he could be. So, is there as much of a question mark about Walsh's ability to maybe fine-tune himself as there is for Nick Smith's knee, or are these totally different situations?
Yeah, I guess you could kind of make that comparison. Yeah, but you're right. Walsh is he's still developing. He's an interesting case. You see these mock drafts and the people that you talk to, he's really kind of hovered in that mid to later second round range, I think, for that reason. But he's also been one of those guys the last few days here who's generated some buzz late as maybe a potential stock riser. Obviously, you guys mentioned, just a ton of physical tools with the length and the athleticism, just so disruptive already on the defensive end. And there's a role for all those things. But his ceiling is going to be defined on how he can refine his offensive game and be able to create space and make one-on-one plays and attack off the dribble. That three-point shot sure looks good. Can he knock that thing down consistently? I know he's had some workouts with NBA franchises where he's really, really shot it well. So, his projections are still a little bit all over the place. I think he is going to be a guy that's going to need, some fine-tuning and some development, probably some G League time. But, my eyes with Jordan Walsh are really on whether or not he can get inside that top 45. That's usually where you find that pretty solid guaranteed money there in that top half of the second round. So if he can work his way into that, I think he's going to be in a really good spot. But either way, he's probably more of a guy who's going to make that impact 2-3 years down the road for an NBA franchise as opposed to right away.
Does this draft, if Ricky Council, if he does get drafted and you have 4, is Arkansas back to being a Tier 1 college basketball program?
They have to be, right? You just don't see this too often. I know we've had the years where, Duke will have, 4 or 5 guys come off the board, Kentucky, whatever. And, for Arkansas to put themselves in that category, I think it's huge. Mentioned at the top of the segment, just for the visibility, the branding of the program, that's a big deal. And then it's also so, you can kind of double down on that in recruiting. When they brought in Nick Smith and Anthony Black and Jordan Walsh, those 3 McDonald's All-Americans, they brought them in under the premise of, hey, you guys are going to be one and done, and then you're going to be in the league. That was the expectation, and that's what you're going to get. And so that kind of shows the recruits, hey, if we've got these goals for our future and these projections, going to Arkansas is a place where we can get it done. So I think that's really important. And, you mentioned Council. He'd be Eric Musselman's first transfer at Arkansas, at least, to get drafted. A guy that comes from Wichita State, he transfers up to a higher level and has such great success. And, he kind of paves the way for that pathway as well, which I think is big. And the interesting thing about Council, and I really hope he gets selected. A lot of these mock drafts, some of them you don't see him in. A lot of them you see him in the 50 to 58 range there at the end. I know he's worked out with just about every team in the league at this point. I think he's a little undervalued, to be honest with you. A lot of people point to Ricky's shooting, and that's fair. It's unorthodox. It hasn't been consistent, but he's such a relentless and gifted slasher. And he's going to an NBA that's got just a ton of room and space.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wider lane. He's got the defensive 3 seconds, and as gift as he is getting above the rim and finishing. Boy, that really plays. And so I think there could be a lot of value for a guy like Ricky Council in the back end of that second round. So, hope he gets selected. If he does, that's 4 Razorbacks, and for the first time since 92. That's a really big deal.
And I think it's interesting that you look at the potential lottery picks and you've got guys, just reading the mock drafts, are coming from all different sorts of amateur or whatever you want to call college basketball these days, semi-pro and whatever you want to call it. But, you get The French league is a couple of guys. Of course, Wemby's out of that French league playing for the Metropolitans 92. Guys out of the American Conference, the SEC, the Big 12. And then there's the kids that are coming from Overtime Elite and the Ignite team in the G League.
And are they twins? Are those kids twins?
The Thompson twins.
Yeah.
I wonder where, and maybe it's different person to person. Where do you think, like in college, you're not necessarily, are you going up against the same kind of grown man that you might face in the G League? And I don't know what to think about the league that Mets 92 plays in out in Europe.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a fair question. I think from maybe a talent standpoint, especially if you're a high major, if you're an SEC player, you're going up, fairly consistently against the type of athletes, and size that you're going to see, but maybe not the physical maturity. I mean, I think the college game is getting older now because of NIL and the transfer portal. I think that's helped from that standpoint. It's interesting. That's 92. It's the top professional league there in France. And so a guy like Victor Wembanyama and his teammate, who's probably going to be a lottery pick, his name escapes me right now, but, those guys are going up against, grown men who are, 30 years old. And so it's just a little bit different. And it's crazy. It just speaks to the different avenues to which you can get to where you want to be as a basketball player. It is a global game. You see all the success of these guys overseas. Obviously, college basketball has been an interesting route for people to take. But then you look at these things like G League, Ignite, and, Overtime Elite. And there's been some questions about that, in terms of the development and how it translates, and it's still relatively new. The level of competition that they're playing, in a relatively small sample size so far, it's looked pretty decent for those guys. But I think this will be the first year where we really start to see how those new kind of niche programs are working out, because there's still a lot of unknowns there. So I'm anxious to see, especially with those guys like the Thompson twins, like Scoot Henderson, how is that really going to translate to the league? I guess we'll find out here soon enough.
All right, switching gears just for a moment on another aspect of basketball. There's a scholarship open for Arkansas right now, and I read where they had a center or power forward out of Memphis in the transfer portal that visited. The visit ended yesterday. What do you have on? Well, we know who they're looking at, and I don't know if they offered him or not. We'll see what happens. But what do you expect with this last scholarship?
Well, they're going to fill it. I'd be surprised if they didn't. I think there's a couple different avenues that Arkansas could go with right now. Looking at the roster, can they fill that kind of small forward, power forward, hybrid 3-4 kind of role? That Jordan Walsh played for him last year, maybe that they had envisioned for a guy like Ron Holland before they missed out there. And so there's some names floating around out there, right now that they're looking at. It might be options. Denijay Harris out of Southern Miss is one guy that I think fits that mold. Maybe a name to know there. And the other route you could go is maybe more of a traditional power forward. Obviously, Eric Musselman likes his versatility, but maybe a guy that could play some small ball 5 and do some more things to help solidify that front court. And that's where the guy you mentioned, Chandler Lawson out of Memphis, kind of falls in line there. This guy, he's 6'7", 6'8", depending on where you look at. But the thing about him that really stands out, he's got a 7-foot, 7-inch wingspan.
Whoa.
It's just ridiculous. Tweeted out a picture from their visit, and you can just see, his arms there with Eric Musselman. It looks like he could wrap around him twice. It's incredible. So, this is a guy who's played a lot of basketball. He spent 2 years at Oregon and then 2 years at Memphis. He started some. He's come off the bench, but he's been a productive rotation player everywhere that he's been. I think he could help Arkansas. And as I'm told, that visit went well. Don't know that he has anything else scheduled at the time. He's got other schools who are obviously interested, but I get the feeling that Arkansas is going to want to wrap this up sooner rather than later. So maybe we'll hear about something there soon.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.